Hey guys, this is Harrison alongside Josh, and this is the Awkward Sports Podcast. And before we get into talking about the Florida Gators, world's largest cocktail party, Josh, I just want to quickly talk about Rays legend Evan Longoria, who had an RBI single tonight for the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 2 of the World Series. I just wanted to throw that one out there. That was actually really nice to see his first RBI since the other RBI he had in the 2008 World Series. I believe that was in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not forget other Rays legend Tommy Pham, obviously not Longoria legend, but he's
Oh,
four
of
for four
course.
tonight for D-backs.
Yeah, I mean, Pham had a home run last night. He's 4 for 4 today. I think anyone who has watched Tommy Pham knows that pickoff was coming. That man, he is a great contact bat. He'll get you the clutch solo shot, but he is not the best base runner. Like some people are like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" Oh, I mean, have you never watched this guy before in your life? Also, shout out to Ryan Thompson for the scoreless inning last night as well. I mean, if we're already going to talk about the other former Rays, we got to include him too, don't we?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was gonna leave him out because he asked to leave, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah.
Okay, no, but like I don't blame him. It's like if he's gonna get stuck in the minors, it's like, look, I want a chance to go somewhere where I can play in the majors. I think the Rays looked at that and said, okay, we don't blame you, so we will grant you your release. And I think it worked out. The Rays had a great bullpen this year, and Thompson has had his chance to be a major league pitcher this year. Win-win scenario all around.
Absolutely. One other thing to note for the Diamondbacks, they have advertised it a little bit today. They are going to embrace and kind of return to a lot more of their teal that they had back in the early
Really?
2000s. They're the jersey that they have that they've been advertising, the D-backs one that's got that teal outline. They're going to have a full-on teal jersey, and it's going to say the full word Diamondbacks across the chest. They're planning on bringing it back.
Ooh.
It's not going to be the old teal and purple that we've seen before with the D-backs. It's going to be the teal with the red, but apparently they're going to upon a different shade of red or something like
Is it
that.
kind
But
of like how the Rays brought back the Devil Rays, but not fully? It wasn't the black with the purple and the green, but they kind of still went with the gradient, but the updated. Is that kind of what you're going at?
it's maybe it's closer comparison to that for sure. They're kind of stick with the red a little bit, change the tone of that, and then but it's going to be a teal jersey though, so that's pretty cool to see
I can see that.
teams embracing unique colors. We have enough teams in all of sports that are red, white, and blues, so uh,
I
it's
can think
pretty
of about five of them right off the top of my head.
we could spend all day talking about that. But one team that wore blue and probably felt even more blue than what they were wearing tonight was Florida.
And they
Uh,
were left red in the face against a team that is dressed in red.
Nice, nice, nice. So Harrison, I'll let you start this out. The floor is yours. Florida, Georgia recap. You're
Okay, yeah. I didn't make a recap for social media today. All I did was own the fact that my score prediction was absolute, as Dave Sampson likes to say on his podcast, horse hockey. It was, I predicted in the last episode 33 to 25. I could not have been more wrong. I mean, I guess I could have, but 43 to 20 is still not great. I guess I was close to the Gators score. I was only off by 4 points, which, when predicting a score is actually quite a bit. That's more than a field goal. And, casually was just off by 10 points, a touchdown and a field goal for Georgia. So as you can tell, I made brilliant picks. And I'll say this, at least it looked like I was on to something after the first quarter. Gators had a great first drive, went up 7-0. That red zone defense held to a field goal. Okay, Georgia scored a touchdown. That was bound to happen. It's 10-7 after 15 minutes. Everyone's feeling good. I almost felt like I was justified in saying in the last episode, there is no reason to not be confident that you will win this game if you go up X number of points. Because it almost felt like that first quarter was proving my points. And then, the Gators went and had 5 drives with about 0 yards total. That's, they went turnover on downs 3 times in the game, 2 of them which led to Georgia touchdowns. They had the strip fumble recover, and that also led to a touchdown. It's also kind of crazy when you look at the individual player stats in this game. Like Graham Mertz's numbers still look good. Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, almost said Travis. Jeez, Trevor Etienne.
They were playing in Jacksonville. I mean,
they were playing in Jacksonville. That's true.
And for the record, the broadcasters actually butchered that last year when Trevor made his appearance there. And it is kind of confusing because you got Trevor Etienne, you got Travis Etienne, and then you have Trevor Lawrence. And it's like, oh, you know.
Then they're also then they're all in the same city.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's for this game. But yeah, you know, Ricky Pearsall still looked like he had good numbers. Eugene Wilson / Trey Wilson looked really good. And then you realize, oh, individually, everyone had their moments, but nothing really came together. Because, like, if you watch the game, those numbers make no sense. They didn't look good. The defense gave up almost 500 total yards. Obviously, that translates to the 43 points. I'm going to give Mertz a pass because he had 3 touchdowns in this game. Even though you really can't say he went above and beyond either. It's almost like someone has to get a like maybe no one deserves a pass in this game, but when you have 3 touchdowns in a losing effort, I also can't say, wow, you really suck today. But, you know, everyone else, because even he had the rushing touchdown. He had the 2 passing touchdowns, and he had the rushing touchdowns. None of the running backs did. He did. The play calling by Billy Napier, I don't know what that call was on 4th and inches. Was that supposed to be a Trevor Etienne? Was supposed to make a pass? Just stack the box and have Graham Mertz fall forward. Just fall forward. He's 6 feet tall. If you just fall forward and no one pushes you back up, you will have a first down. But no, let's go 5 yards back and have the running back throw a pass forward. That's, man, galaxy braining that one. Oh my God. And by the way, I will never tell anyone. I will tell everyone, firing Napier is still the dumbest thing. He's still learning how to coach in the SEC. He's recruiting well. As you see, his recruits already look really good. You see the pieces for the future. But wow, like that was like that, like the Kentucky game was bad already. And then you just look at that one play in particular, and you're like, oh, I was ready to scream. I think everyone just kind of looked at that and went, what on earth? Georgia fans were like, okay, we'll take it, but what was that?
I feel like we are, I don't know. I feel like we have now made like a flashback to like 15 years in the past where Georgia fans were counting stars and we were counting points. Now it's the opposite. Georgia's counting all the points and we're like, oh, we got all these 5 stars coming in. So before I dive into any little play, I am going to preview with just, I am not at all ashamed in the Florida Gators today. I am ashamed at myself for allowing myself.
I think that's probably how I feel too. What you're about to say.
Week. Because if you had asked me back in July or in August, what was going to be the inevitable outcome of a Florida-Georgia game again this year, knowing with the players that we had coming in, knowing with the players that we were losing, I was like, oh, Georgia's going to run away with it. It's not even going to be close. I somehow deluded myself over the past week to thinking it would be. I am not ashamed of the Gators. I am ashamed of me. I did say Florida would score 20 points. They did score 20 points. Not really the way I imagined it. I mean, they had
you had 14 points, 2 touchdowns with 36 Georgia points sandwiched in between. Probably didn't expect that either.
No. I mean, and as I said, I was like, how you start the game. And obviously on the first drive, they went down and looked great. And they scored the touchdown. So they go up 7. And after that, we talk about that play that you were just talking about, that 4th and inches. We can talk about what the play should have been, what should not have conspired there.
Still, even when we talk about not being totally upset with the team, and I agree, I think we are probably more mad at ourselves for buying into something that was complete crap. But at the same time, too, it's like we still got to look and say, okay, what went wrong? Well, this certainly did, because you had two bad plays inside at least inside your own 40. In one case, I think with the strip fumbles inside at least the 30 or the 25 in your own zone, your own territory. And then, of course, they're going to lead to touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. So now I'm going to go into that one play that we have now been talking about, which I think it could have a whole episode on this one play. Pretty much, it really changed the complexion of the game. Oh, yeah. So the 4th and inches, obviously, I might be a little biased. Call me biased Gator fan. I might be, but I thought he had the first down, and on the field it was called a first down, and I don't think replay review gave indisputable evidence that there was enough to overturn that.
I think most people thought that was a first down.
Yeah.
And listen, I get you we watched this one on television. Neither of us were there live. You're in Connecticut. Right. I'm in St. Pete, Florida. But when the CBS broadcast shows the replay and it keeps showing him going over the line, which I want to clarify is not official.
Yeah.
Never has been. It never will be.
We found out today.
Yeah. When you see that and the guy goes blatantly over the line and then you see them call it short.
Right.
It just shows that they're really, I guess it has to just do with the angle. It's the same argument with whether or not the Lightning gave up a goal in game 6 of 2004 that should have won it for Calgary, but maybe went in, maybe didn't. When you look at one angle, it looks like it passed a certain spots. But when you shift over, the reality is your eyes aren't actually seeing what actually happened. If you get what I mean by that.
Right. No, I totally do. And I mean, so obviously that was big and it caused the 4th and inches. Obviously, that's not why we lost the game. But anyway, now let's get to the play. First, I want to commend Billy Napier for at least living up to what he has been preaching coming into our culture about scared money don't make none. I think without a question, you go for it there. I don't care if you're bad.
I agree.
You can't
100% agree with that.
You can't play scared against Georgia. Now, the play itself it failed so miserably to the point where I wasn't even angry. I was kind of laughing. Like, it's hard not to laugh when you think about it. But when you kind of see the play, I also didn't look at the play as like, well, why did you call that? Like, it's easy to say, why did you call that when it goes that bad? It was more of like, when you watch it, there's just this clear, like somebody clearly missed an assignment. Not to say that if that assignment was like hit, that the play would have succeeded. But there was this Georgia rusher that was unblocked, like just immediately in the backfield. It like the play had no shot. Like the moment the ball was snapped, it almost seemed like somebody was supposed to pick that guy up and nobody was there. And I mean, then Trevor's looking like he's going to throw it. He looks like he's going to try to be Trevor Lawrence, but instead it's not Trevor Lawrence, it's Trevor Etienne, and he's on the ground. And then you kind of look at the game and you're like, well, now Georgia's probably going to go down and score here. So now you kind of have to feel like you're going to have to get the ball back.
Trevor Lawrence, you and Graham Mertz.
Trevor Etienne, when Trevor, like, because he was the one that was back there.
Right. You said, okay. I know what you mean by that now. I was like, okay, we were talking Trevor's earlier. So I'm like, okay, did he actually say the wrong Trevor?
Yeah, it was by play on, like, that's not Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville dropping back the pass. That's Trevor Etienne. We got to remember that. He's a good runner. He's a running back for a reason. But like after that play and they get the ball and you score and then you look up and you're like, okay, now you're behind. And one thing we were preaching all week and in the episode before the game was you cannot, I mean, you got to get out in front of this team and you don't want to fall behind. And they fell behind after that first drive. And like after that play, everything just kind of unraveled. It was like the final score again. I feel like last year, it wasn't really reflective of what was going down. It just seemed like, again, Georgia might have been missing players, but Georgia was still that much better. The gap is still large. Keep in mind, Florida has a lot of players still coming in next year, and we'll see what the gap looks like then. But right now, a lot of those players have not come to campus yet, have not become part of the team. Last year, the class was like 13th in the country. This next year, it looks like right now it's sitting at 3 or 4. So that'll be a big upgrade. And of course, those guys will still be freshmen. It'll be time for them to develop. We're still in the rebuild process. I know sometimes for some programs it happens quicker than others, but Florida is going to be a longer one. And I agree. I still think we should keep Billy Napier as the head coach. The winning on the road aside, which that still has to be something that figures out. But again, this wasn't a game that we were supposed to win. So the idea, who gets a pass, who doesn't get a pass. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really have any blame to go around. The team that Florida just played today was just that much better, and I just didn't want to believe it over the past week, but they were.
Yeah. And no, I completely agree with you. Like, in the end, had that play worked out, you would have been like, okay. But I still feel like in that specific, just because it was 4th and inches, if this was, let's say, like even 4th and 2, you have a couple yards to go, I almost more understand that play going with some kind of trick play. But when you're that close, it really, like I said earlier, it is just falling forward. Keep it simple. Wait until you have multiple downs to try something a little fancier. And here's where I go into defending Billy. Like, there's so many people I saw on Twitter already say, and they're like, it's like their weekly fire Billy Napier. One, who are you going to replace him with?
Dan Mullen, he's available, I hear.
Yeah, that's okay. Fair point. I mean, Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer are technically not employed as coaches either right now.
That's it, Harrison. Well, I mean, we got to talk to Spurrier about this, right? What happened? I thought he gave the team a speech. I mean, coach, you dropped the ball there. I mean, what's going on?
Okay, and I don't know, but all I know is, like, yeah, let's try Spurrier and Meyer. I've heard they're good coaches, but no, but it is a genuine question. Like, at some point, you have to go with someone. Like, think about it just with like Napier compared to even just like Meyer. Looked really good at Utah, who was a group of 5 school at the time, then got hired by Florida. Spurrier made Duke look good before going to Florida. And I know, and you have to remember too, like, Spurrier is the one who made Florida relevant. Meyer is the one who made Florida the biggest thing for like 3-4 years. And then if you take that away, how great really has Gator football's history been? Not very.
And to add to sorry to cut you up, and to add to what you were just talking about, when they added Spurrier and then they added Urban Meyer, we also have to look at the landscape of the SEC when those hires were made. So when Steve Spurrier was hired on in the early 90s to be the Florida's next football coach, I mean, Georgia wasn't that great. LSU wasn't that great. Bama had their years, but they weren't Nick Saban, Alabama, the front runner to win every year. Tennessee was really good. That was the team that Florida needed to beat. And that was really the team that they needed to get over the hump against, but it was really them. We know Kentucky wasn't relevant back then. I mean, the SEC was pretty much open. It was like, Spurrier, can you come in here and beat Tennessee? That was really that was the challenge. And really, Florida succeeded in the SEC with Spurrier. They really, if it wasn't for Nebraska, I mean, Florida would have had maybe more than one national championship under their belt in the 90s. They lost to Bowden in Nebraska.
And you, along with Nebraska, go back, can you beat Tennessee? In Spurrier's last year, they had the famous loss to Tennessee in the last regular season game that cost them a chance to go to the national championship. That's just because, after that, you don't go to the SEC championship, which means you can't national championship, which is where everyone for some reason thought it was brilliant to go question Spurrier after everything he had done. So he says, screw you guys, I'm going to the NFL, which is, by the way, that is how it happened. Spurrier has pretty much admitted that as well. Can you imagine an alternate reality where Spurrier is the Florida Gators head coach like 2015?
That would be a really odd reality. I don't know if it's better or worse, because then you
better. Like, think Spurrier could have gotten Tim Tebow in person?
I don't know what kind of tactics they were doing under the Meyer tutelage. So who knows? Who knows? But so now I'm going to segue over to Meyer, right? So I'm going to segue to the Meyer part, right? We talked about the landscape. We talked about the landscape of what were you saying?
Look at what Spurrier did at South Carolina. Once he finally got his chance to really build things, he made South Carolina good about a decade ago.
Yeah, and I mean, we can talk about like better or worse. It'd be very interesting. It would remain to be seen. Obviously, we won't know, but going into the Meyer era, right? Let's look at the SEC's landscape at that point. So when Florida hired Urban Meyer in 2004, you look around. Obviously, again, Bama hadn't got Saban yet. Bama was not this juggernaut. That was a team that Florida was going to be like, well, if you win the East, you're going to have to face big bad Bama, and you're going to have to find a way to win the SEC and go through them. That wasn't an issue. LSU in the early 2000s were really good. And then Saban left and went to the NFL. So when Urban Meyer was hired, Saban was gone from the SEC. Georgia had a solid program with Mark Richt, but it wasn't what Tennessee was in the 90s, and Tennessee had completely fallen off the map. So when Urban got hired by Florida, again, the conference was pretty much open for a leader, like a team that could reign per se. And again, that's an Urban Meyer kind of took that reign and was able to win 2 national championships, and he was able to go against some of the best schools outside of the conference and win. And that's kind of the key thing there with the Spurrier and Myers hirings, as although they were both great coaches and great hires for Florida, we can't ignore that when they were hired, the road to success wasn't as challenging as it is now. Like almost every team in the SEC, obviously this particular year isn't the best example of everything because the
But
Pac-12
kinda
but like you have, like, for example, Georgia is borderline. They're not there yet, but if they keep this up, they're borderline the new Bama. Like they've won 2 in a row. They've won 26 games in a row. I mean, I don't know who's going to beat them. I mean, they keep finding ways to win games with all these injuries. And so that team is now in your division. And this team is tougher than the 90s Vols. This team is up there with some of these Bama teams. They just are. And you have to play them every year. Florida State's really good. I mean, when Meyer came in, Bowden was getting ready to retire. And then the Jimbo Fisher thing took over. So it was different. Billy Napier's got a lot on his plate, and the conference is really, really good from a top to bottom standpoint.
Yeah, and even then, like I know you said this year isn't a great example. It still kind of is compared to the past. Like Kentucky is still a solid team, and they weren't good in either of those eras. LSU is still solid. I'm not going to say South Carolina is not good, but they have been a solid team. They were good last year, and they blew out Florida at the end of Mullins' era. Mizzou looks very solid this year. Neither school, I mean, Mizzou wasn't in the SEC and wasn't for Meyer either. So still, but you have more teams, and you also have more teams that are looking way better. It's completely different landscape. And here's another thing to point out with Mullen. One of the biggest things we all realized when Mullen got canned was that he couldn't recruit. And once the last big pieces, the Kyle Trask, Pitts, Tony, all those guys left, all the cracks came to a point where they were so huge you couldn't ignore them, that it was he couldn't recruit. Yes, he gets some solid pieces like a Justin Shorter to transfer over, but he wasn't able to recruit. And because of that, you don't have a good roster here. And then suddenly you're going to get upset with Billy Napier that he's losing, at least in the first season and a half, with a lot of those exact same players who are the weak pieces that Mullen recruited. There's still Mullen players on this team right now. I mean, a lot of them have left, but look, this is Napier's second season. The oldest players on the team who have been here 4 years were there in 2020 and 2021. Anthony Richardson was just a starter last year, and he was a Mullen product.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that was to your point, though. It's not even really more that he couldn't recruit. It was whether or not he made the time and effort to go all in on recruiting. Because again, all these players that you're talking about, like he was capable of recruiting players. Now, was he as committed to the recruiting process as Billy Napier is? Absolutely not. And that was part of the reason. And the other part of the reason was you got to be careful about what you say to the media. We're not going to recruit during the season. Whoops. Oops.
I want to clarify too, while we're talking about key players and starting the show, Mullen also had some good McElwain recruits that he won with for a few years. Like we mentioned Trask. He came in under the previous coach.
To mention the defensive talent that was inevitably run into the ground by, a defensive
Exactly, ran the ground by Todd Graham, but on top of that, still those great defensive players that made Grantham look good. I almost said the wrong name because of Graham Mertz, but they made Todd Grantham made him look good for a couple of years. Is those defensive recruits that were brought in by the previous head coach?
Jonathan Grenard, Jabari Zuniga. I mean, these guys were, edge rushers were great. I mean, you had Chauncey Gardner, I think a little bit before that, but he was there in Mullen's first year. I mean, they had players. I mean, as much as Gator Nation will bash on Marco Wilson, I mean, the dude had 2 ACL surgeries and he was still out there playing football, which I mean, that blows my mind. And he's doing all right in the NFL, so he was a talented player.
No one would even have anything necessarily bad to say about Marco Wilson if it wasn't for one single thing. Literally, before the shoe was thrown, how much did we really have to say about Marco Wilson? Like when you think about
before the shoe was thrown, it's like a timeline. Like we're not doing BC and we're not doing AD. We're doing Florida before shoe, Florida after shoe, and let me tell you, Florida after shoe, it's got some kind of stench to it. You got to take that shoe.
It's also funny. You can say before shoe is also BS.
Yeah,
like it kind of works. Like before BS and during the BS, I guess. But it just comes down to like Billy is cleaning things up. He is not afraid to tell guys, if you're not buying in, feel free to leave. And some people have left. It rubs a lot of Florida fans the wrong way, but also Florida fans. And this comes from a 2-time graduate of this university. I have 2 degrees from this place. So you can't say I am not committed to the University of Florida. And I certainly have my biases, of course, but they also have the most impatient fan base with absurdly high expectations I have ever seen before in my life. Maybe it's because I came from Tampa Bay, where before 2020, they did nothing but lose. And I was just happy to see some New Year's Six bowls. But at the same time, it's like, what would you rather have? Like some growing pains followed by many, many years of success? Or do you want it to be where the last few head coaches where, Muschamp goes to the Sugar Bowl, yay, and then 2 guys block each other and lose to Georgia Southern? Or you have it with McElwain where, okay, you're good enough to go to the Citrus Bowl and the Outback Bowl, and then you absolutely fall apart. And then someone's being rumored of, hanging out with a shark. And then there's Mullen, who was great, got to 3 New Year's Six bowls, won 2 of them, then everything fell apart again. He lost the locker room. That's another thing. I don't think Napier's hanging on to the locker room. He's at least he has a lot of accountability as well. That is one thing that they are gaining back from Mullen's departure, since he wore the Darth Vader outfit and all that.
So we've talked about the shark, we talked about the blocking each other, we talked about the Darth Vader outfit, the throwing of the shoe, the
football.
Maybe we're just cursed. No, I don't know. It's like I think the fan base, or the part of the fan base that is so quick to move on from coaches, I think part of it is, you look at just the overall, not so much what Florida isn't doing, but what other programs have begun doing since the last time Florida was at the top of the SEC East.
It's true. But also, you got to give these coaches time. And even then, you could have the worst year in LSU, even though they've won since then with Ed Orgeron. You look at Nick Saban and say, ooh, you lost 3 games or whatever it was, so Saban just goes to the NFL. It's the same thing as Spurrier. Like, you cannot run your coaches out of town because a couple years suck. Rebuilding has to happen. If whoever's excited for these recruits, like the DJ Lagways of the world, if Billy gets fired, he's going to decommit. Everyone's going to leave. You can't, what are you going to do? Wait until they all sign their letters of intent and then fire him so that they're locked in? Maybe they'll all pull that one quarterback. I'm blanking. What was it? Jalen Richard, I think it was, or he went to Arizona.
Rashada? Are you talking about?
Released. Yeah, can you imagine if you did that and then you fire Billy? They're all going to want outs.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think the thing that the thing that you look to that is for Billy Napier is like, all right, we haven't really seen a coach recently put the time and effort into recruit, and it looks like he's doing that. So let's just see what he can do with the players he brings in, and let's see if this is what Florida has been missing. That's why, in my opinion, you give him time, because I feel like he hasn't gotten like his biggest strength hasn't really been applied, and it couldn't really have been applied because it takes time for the players to come in. So once we start seeing him with the guys that he recruited, with the big time 5 stars, which we couldn't ever seem to land before that, after Meyer and before Napier, and the DJ Lagways and the LJ McRae's and the Xavier Phil Same, if I botched his last name, when those guys come in, what will Florida look like then? Will they be able to start winning games? Because then the talent excuse comes out the window, and then it comes down to play
That's
call.
fair. Bring in the talent, you still don't win. It's fair game. But all right, before we run out of time, Florida going forward, you have Arkansas, LSU, Mizzou, Florida State left on the schedule. What do you see going forward?
Well, I mean, I guess it's fitting that Florida has Arkansas next with a blackout game. I mean, after a loss like this, I mean, I think everybody's showing up to a funeral. No, but I mean, at home, a noon game. I mean, I hope the players can get up for this. I hope that they get light a fire into by coach. But like again, Arkansas is 2-6. So if Florida can't win that game, then there's some bigger problems. Again, there's nobody. I don't have really any blame to go around against this for this game. It's just a bad game against a much better team. The expectations were. I mean, I just felt like I put the expectations too high too. Again, Arkansas, you got to win that game. If you play LSU and you're going on the road to LSU, they'll probably lose that one. I think Arkansas is the last one they have, honestly, on the season. I don't see them going on the road against Missouri and winning. I mean, Billy Napier had a hard enough time winning on the road against South Carolina, and he hasn't really. I know he had that one road win and the one against A&M last year, but he still hasn't really.
A&M was a losing record then that year too.
Yeah, like beat a good team on the road. Well, he hasn't done that yet, so that still remains to be seen. I don't think he's going to do it against Missouri. And yes, I know Florida is going to come full packed for the rivalry game against Florida State, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough. I watched Florida State today against Wake Forest, and I know Wake Forest isn't anything to ride home about, but I mean they tore them to shreds. I mean Trey Benson, Jordan Travis. I mean those guys. They just look like they're more talented on paper, and they showed it on the field as well today.
Yeah. And for my final thought is, and I fully agree with you. I also think Arkansas, I think it's the last guaranteed win for Florida. I still think Mizzou is winnable, but I'm already writing off LSU because it's at Death Valley, and Florida State, well, they're 8-0. They're number 4. Oh, yeah. Reminder, Mike Norvell. Remember when everyone wanted him fired after 2 years and now they're pushing for the playoff? Florida fans who are saying, oh, we don't want Mike Norvell. Well, it looks pretty good right now. Just want to throw that out there. What I'm saying is for this season, if you can get a win against Arkansas and Mizzou, get to 7 wins, get into that bowl game, maybe even win that bowl game, or if you only have 7 wins with one of them being that bowl game, you're still able to show there is improvement this year. You take that on the recruiting trail, and you're able to get ready for 2024 with some phenomenal big name recruiting talent coming in. And that, folks, is where we will leave it off on this episode of the Awkward Sports Podcast. I'm Harrison. That's Josh. Gators lose to Georgia 43-20. And again, give Billy a break, and we will see you next time.